Welcome to the I Love Coaching podcast, the show where we help coaches, entrepreneurs, and leaders build businesses that create massive impact. I'm Adam Roach, alongside my incredible co-host,
Jess Webber, and we're here today to bring you the best strategies, mindset shifts, and real-life success stories to help you level up in your coaching journey.
Whether you're launching your coaching business, scaling to 6 or 7 figures, or just looking for inspiration to push through, this podcast is your go-to resource.
We're bringing you expert insights, real talk, and actionable items every single episode. So if you're ready to take your coaching game to the next level,
then let's dive on in. Jess, we're back. We are back. And this time, you all, I want to set an expectation. We're not going to solve any of your problems today. Jess, we're not solving any problems today. What we're going to do, and this is going to be a short podcast because this is going to be a fun podcast. We've heard from people that say, we love your podcast. We've looked you guys up. We don't really know who you are or why we're engaging in your stuff simply other than you help coaches. So Jess, today is going to be a fun 5 questions back and forth that we are going to ask each other. And we're going to share with our listeners who we are, what we do, why we're here, and just have them get to know us. How does that sound? Does that sound like fun?
I think it's amazing. Since we just did the last episode on building trust, I think this is a great way to do it and show up authentically. So y'all are going to hear the live, unedited version of Adam and I answering these questions. And yes. I have no preparation for this. So this will be real unedited and real live for y'all.
Good. Well, let's dive in here. So Jess, first question to you. Where are you originally from? And what's your greatest memory of that spot?
So I am a born and raised St. Louis, Missouri. We call it the state of misery, right? And then I live in the Lou. Those are the lovely nicknames. So the Lou in the state of misery. But to me, it's not. It's home. It's the place I always come back to every time I move away. And I would say my greatest memory is honestly all of the opportunities that I've had in the city that are family-oriented things that are also grounded in history. And what I mean by that is we have one of the world's best zoos, and it's free, and you can go to it whenever you want. But inside of it, it has historic things like the 1904 World's Fair birdcage. So you get to experience an incredible piece of history while doing something that's family-oriented. And so I have memories doing that kind of thing, or going to our version of Central Park, which is called Forest Park, as a kid. And now I get to do it with my kid. And so I love that kind of family-oriented history that we have here.
That's cool. That's really cool.
What about you?
Wow, where am I originally from? So I'm originally from a very small, I think it's probably a city in southern Indiana called Vincennes, Indiana. That's where I was born. I didn't stay there very long, but Vincennes, Indiana, we would go back and forth. I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we would go back and forth to Vincennes because my grandmother lived there. And, I want to say it probably had, at that time, probably a population of maybe 10,000 people, maybe up to 20,000 now, last time I looked. So it was very, very small, though very historic. There was a lot of historic landmarks there. And what was my greatest memory there? Well, a couple things. So we had a priest in the family, and where my parents were married was called the Old Cathedral. And this was a massive Catholic church. Beautiful, very, very, very pretty as those cathedrals usually are, though they had a crypt. And I didn't know what a crypt was as it relates to the actual language, but I just knew there was a bunch of dead people buried down there. And so I used to love to go to church because I was like, Grandma, take me down there. And it was so fun. We'd go down there, and I'd get to see where all these old, we're talking I think 1700s and stuff. People were buried down there. I was like, this is really scary. This is really creepy, but also really cool. And so I don't know why. That's just a fun memory of seeing this beautiful church and then knowing that underneath there were a bunch of dead priests, I guess.
You are so funny because I went to Westminster Abbey in London, and I'm sitting there not upset over the fact that there's many people buried there, but like crying over the magnitude of the history that was in that place. So I'm
Yeah.
not thinking dead bodies, I'm thinking history.
I was so thinking dead bodies. Yep, for sure.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome. Okay. So let me ask you then, second question. What did you want to be when you grew up versus where
ooh.
you are now?
Well, I played a lot of sports, and I definitely wanted to be a professional something or other in sports until I got into high school and realized I wasn't very big, so football was not going to be it. I wasn't very tall, so basketball wasn't going to be it. Even though I grew up in Indiana, and every boy, for the most part, growing up in Indiana has to be at least a decent basketball player, though tennis was my sport. And I wanted to play professional tennis. Though I also realized that that was probably going to be a long shot. And so I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Hmm.
And that was what I really wanted to be, only because I knew it would bring me to a state that had palm trees, because there were no palm trees in Indiana. We actually just had a ton of corn. And I hated being cold. And I remember always going down to my uncles in South Florida saying, this is where I want to be. I want to be where it doesn't ever snow. And so I want to be a marine biologist. And gosh, I loved it. I loved it so much that I wanted to play tennis down in a Florida school and go study marine biology. And then I found out that I had to actually take biology, and it wasn't just about being on the beach or being underwater with dolphins and stuff. And so I realized that biology was not that fun, and I got out of that. And now, through college, I went to Indiana University and studied through the business school computer information systems, and was a computer programmer for fun, because this was the 90s and that's what every kid was doing, is trying to program so they could build a .com. And now, Jess, I help coaches build coaching businesses. It's kind of fun.
That is quite the path and transition. I'm laughing because mine's a little different. I've always had an inclination to learning. And so I laugh because, like, if I think kindergarten graduation, I dressed up as a geologist, somebody who
Mm,
studied rocks. But it wasn't because I actually was interested in the science of the rocks, I was interested in the history of them. And so
mm,
that very quickly, once I started reading and going to school and everything, transitioned into wanting to become an archaeologist, specifically focused on ancient Egypt because I was
wow.
fascinated by it, until I hit like middle school when I realized that that probably wasn't going to be a lucrative career. And that became, okay, I'm going to be a history teacher, because the only things you can do with history degrees are archaeology, become a docent, an author, or a teacher, basically.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I did become a history teacher until I left teaching to go to real estate, to go to coaching, where I got back into teaching in every one of those spaces. And
Okay.
so I now partner with you and I teach people how to build coaching businesses effectively. And so I laugh because I'm like, okay, I learned from history and I teach, and it's been around since the core of my beginning of understanding what I could do with myself.
Oh, I love it. Okay, so, and you are really good at teaching, and clearly history is in what we call books. So, and you read a ton of books. If you could read only one genre of book for the rest of your life, what would that be? What would you choose?
Fantasy. Easy.
Fantasy.
Hands down. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see behind me there are tons of like business, self-help, self-improvement books that are color coded because that's the office aesthetic. And I have read every single book behind me. But at the same time, that's probably 20% of what I read in a year. And the other 80% is fantasy. And sometimes that's like romantic fantasy, sometimes it's science fiction. Like, I mean, it can be anything, but fantasy is a pretty broad genre, which gives me
Yeah.
opportunity inside of it. And yeah, that's how I kind of dissociate, disconnect from the real world and do a little mini reset, because I read roughly a book a day on average. Usually I have two or three going at a time, so I'm literally not starting page one at the end of the beginning of the day and closing the book at the end of the day, because I've got an audiobook, a Kindle book, and a nonfiction book going. But I love reading. I
Yeah.
mean, it's a place to expand your thinking as well as it is to potentially escape reality. And it's just like, how could anybody not love reading?
It's true. It's very, very
What
true.
about you? I know you read some, not quite as much as me, but if you could only read one type of book, what would you pick?
Well, first of all, there's not many people on this planet that can read as much as you. So I love to read though autobiographies. Autobiographies are my
Mm.
go-to. I love to hear from historic people. Now, even though John D. Rockefeller never had an autobiography, he had many biographies about him. And there was one that caught my imagination, my attention, and it's called Titan, and it's a huge 700-page book about him and about his life. And no joke, I read it 5 times. And it really just shaped my thinking in the business space. And I went on to read as many other Rockefeller books as I could, specifically about his family and just the legacy and the generational growth, if you will, that their family had. So I love autobiographies. I love reading from the perspective of that person as they're writing about their life. It's just fascinates me. Just really fascinates me.
That speaks to my history teacher heart. I just got a little bit burned out on having to read history when I was doing my undergrad degree
Yeah.
because I had to take multiple history classes, and then each history class was 5 to 20 books per class that I had to
Wow.
read and like synthesize and write papers on and all of that. And so I'm like, I love it. And I read enough for a while,
Sure. Sure.
but I love that. No,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Well, I also here's a fun fact is I love to read autobiographies and listen to Hans Zimmer scores. So I love to listen to
2 thumbs
music
up.
at the same time. Though I don't like when there's words in the music. I just love the
Mhm.
background noise of sound. And I kid you not, this is such a funny story. When I was reading Titan when it first came out, and I was listening to some Hans Zimmer. So at that time, it was like Gladiator. What were some of the other ones? Holiday. I mean, yeah, it was odd music choices. But when I would watch those movies, The Gladiator, and a certain song would come on, I was like, oh, John D. Rockefeller was doing this at that moment in time. I was like, wait a minute, no,
Yep.
this is the Gladiator movie. Yeah, but it just stunk in my head.
Nope, that's the power I think of music, not to completely digress, but I've had that happen before where like there was a certain CD back in my like, disc, carrying days, middle school or whatever, and I'd have the same CD on repeat while I was reading a book. And now even 20 plus years later, if I hear that song or that CD at all, I'm like, "Oh yeah, that book," and I have the whole visual in my head. And I love it. I
So
love
good,
it. But I
so good.
also think that has to do with the type of reader I am and all the things. Um,
Yeah,
okay, so you like learning lessons, it sounds like, from autobiographies and other people. What would you say your greatest learning lesson is in terms of coaching other coaches?
good question. So my greatest learning lesson in coaching coaches who are building their own business is to be very succinct, right? To be very process step oriented because I always have, you know me very well in my visual speaking and thinking and learning, that I think of a model airplane or a model car, and the coach can see the box, right? They can see the model of what they want to build on the box. And then when they open the box, they can see all the pieces. And I've put together that model before. And so I like to build the instructions there for them to put that together. So the greatest learning lesson that I've had is to be really succinct with the steps. As we've now rewritten the blueprint, we've done that, and we've now been able to succinctly, step by step, phase by phase, walk them through internal themselves to 180,000 to 360,000, over $1 million. And whatever plane they see on the cover of that box, we can now help them build. So the greatest learning lesson that I have had in that space is, as a visionary with visionary language, to support, help, and grow other people, they need to know the steps, right?
Mm,
They need to know the steps. They may be a ready, fire, aim person, though they still need to know the steps on how to line up the target and how to pull the trigger so they can get the outcome that they want.
I love that. Well,
Good.
I mean, We know we're not in an information age, we're in an implementation age. And so anybody can go find the information on how to build a coaching business, but the true how-to steps are best delivered by somebody who's done it. So I think
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. What would you say to you? Your greatest learning lesson in coaching coaches?
I would say kind of actually parallel to yours is put on your own oxygen mask first. And what I mean by that is, you hear it on a plane if you're going with a kid. I just went out of town with my munchkin to Florida, and they're like, "Ma'am, make sure you put yours on first in the event of an emergency." And it's so funny because we'll have coaches come into our world, and they will want to pick up and carry everything they possibly can for the person that they're trying to serve or help or coach because they've done it before or they have an extra arm, right? They're like, "Come along, I'll come help you." And yet they will get so burdened by all of these other things, or even burdened by the idea of building their own business, reading your manual, right?
Right.
And they won't just sit and breathe for a second and figure out what really matters and the one or two like levers they need to pull to be successful. And so I think it's a really important thing to, like you said, be succinct, but also not try to carry everyone and everything at the same time, but identify what really matters first. Oxygen in, the breathing, and then you can take the next step.
Right.
So
That's good.
I think as somebody who has operated as, someone with superhero syndrome, I really like putting on my tights and my cape. I needed to learn that lesson, and I've unfortunately learned it the hard way, so that I always hope that I can help somebody expedite that process and not fall as far as I did without my cape.
Yeah, that's good. Well, and most of us have that's our learning processes, right?
Yeah.
We have to figure it out through failure. So speaking of that, as we approach here the holiday season, what would you say that Jess Webber is most grateful for?
This was not a shameless plug by Adam. He did not know that I was going to say this, but I honestly would say you.
Oh,
In the sense that my life has drastically changed since coming into your world and the world of I Love Coaching and the opportunity to coach. And every time I reflect on what my year has been previously, whether I'm looking at a calendar year or Thanksgiving to Thanksgiving or whatever, I sit and I look back at where I was pre-coaching and where I am now, and it's light years away in the best way possible.
mm,
So I have massive gratitude for what you have built, what you are building, for your trust and belief in me, and the opportunities that you continue to create to not have me come behind you, but alongside you. And that to me is the biggest value you could give me. So
mm.
that's what I'm grateful for.
Oh, well, I mean, how can I say something different? Though I want to add here,
I thought
and
you
this
were just
is
going to say Dana. It's fine.
yeah, no.
The
Though I
other
want to
wife. No,
read
I'm just
this,
kidding.
and I do want to get a little spiritual here because I want you to hear that this is you, right? And this is what I'm grateful for because again, what you have created for the coaches in the community is you've helped bring to life what I've had in my head. And now we've been able to again fail so many times. And I don't say that as in like we got an F, but we have learned that if we're going to step into this space of truly bringing the vision statement of empowering coaches to change and serve 100 million people to life, this has to come to life, right? And that is Matthew 5:14-16. You are the light of the world. This hit me so hard this past weekend. And it's a town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. Right. And that's just what you have done through our challenge, what you've done through the blueprint rewrite is you're helping these coaches have a light, right? So you are, and I think you used the analogy today of the lighthouse that the light's already there, right? Where we're getting to be that mirror that shines it out. And I'll continue in the same way. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And it's just, there's so much goodness in that scripture that's what you do. That's what you are doing, is you are helping these coaches shine their light brighter than they have ever been able to shine it before, because well, they need to have a torch lighter, right? They need to have someone to really crank up that ability in their flame to be super bright, and that's you. That's what you do. So I'm grateful
Well,
for you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I
But
appreciate
by the way,
that.
none of this was scripted, you guys. That was authentic. So that's good. Well, this was fun. This was a fun podcast. That was the intention of this podcast. Is we just talked about trust in a prior podcast, and now we wanted to bring this to light. And who's Adam and who's Jess, with just a few 5 questions, and share a little bit about us. And you can definitely go find more about us at ilovecoachingco.com. Join our challenge there, which is upcoming, and whenever the next one is. And yeah, we appreciate you guys. We're grateful for all of you that listen, for all of you that engage, for all of you that give us the feedback and the support that we need so we can keep doing these.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of our world. And we hope to continue to be part of yours.
That's right. Okay, everybody. We'll have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time. See you. Bye.